Welcome to Code with Kurt, where you can check the latest Google Sheets and Google Apps Script videos. In today's video, we're going to be talking about an inventory tracker. In this particular inventory tracker, we're going to be using the sidebar as our form to input data into our sheet, our inventory sheet here that we got, tracking inventory on part, location, and quantity. And with this form, I'm using a set list of parts I have populated on a sheet, a set list of locations, and also with this I have a log table that keeps track of all the transactions that I'll be doing. So if I go over to inventory here, I'll go up to my menu of inventory tracker. I got a transaction, a receipt, shipment, transfer, adjustment, and I also have an action to do delete zero inventory. Sometimes when you do a shipment, your part location will turn into a 0 here if you ship out 10. This is just a way to delete all your zero inventories out of your list. It is optional. You don't have to use that. If you don't mind having the 0 in there, this just kind of cleans up your inventory sheet. So I'll run a couple of transaction examples here. So here we are on the receipt here. Optional, you can put a PO number here or not. I could do it here, test PO. I'll pick a number, a part number. I'm going to pick number 9, and I'm going to pick a location of L10, and then say we receive in 400. I'm going to hit submit, and there it adds it on the bottom. So now if I pick a location that's already on here, this one here, I can leave it a blank. Again, PO number is optional. I can hit 2, L3, and say I received in 400 here. Like that. It's going to add 400 into your sheet right here for this location. So I'll do another transaction type of shipment. So shipment is an order number. So you have an order number that you're shipping against. I could put it in there. Test order number, part number. Here I have a condensed list of all the part numbers I have inventory on. So if I click 10, and then from there I got my location, the only location that has inventory for, and it's going to pop in the quantity I already have in that location. So I can adjust this. Say we're not going to ship out 63, say we're going to do 25. I hit submit, and I adjusted that inventory down to 38. And go over to my log. Here, my test PO here. Here I didn't put in a PO number, but adjusted. I did part number 3, L3, 400. And then I did a shipment, 10, from location L4, 25. So it just keeps a record of what's going on with your inventory. So I'll do a couple more here. I'll do the transfer. Here I'm just going to move inventory from one location to another, so I'll just do the first one on the list here. Part number 7 from L1. That's going to populate my quantity down here. And I'm going to move that into L10. So I'm going to move 1,000. Hit submit. There it's subtracted it out and then added it down here. And then I could go do an adjustment. Say I got the inventory wrong on this location here, so I can go to 7. L1. And I populate it in here, and next I'm just going to adjust it. Say it's supposed to be 800. I can hit submit, and I'll adjust the quantity here. So that's an example of everything I can do, these 4 things, and then I got the 0 out, which will 0 out the inventory for one of these right here. And I could show you an example of this. I'm going to adjust. We'll just do the first one here, do another adjustment. 7, L1, make this 0, submit. Now it's down to 0. I could just do this. Gives you a warning. Okay, to delete. It's going to go through every one of these and delete 0. You can hit yes, and it takes that one out. of the list here. So again, our log of our 2 adjustments here, it just adjusted to the number that you put in. Our transfer goes from location to location. And also I do have the dates that this occurred on right here. So I'll go through and then give you a step-by-step process of how I put this all together. If you're new to this channel, subscribe to catch my latest videos. Let's get started with this video. Here I am on my Google spreadsheet. I got it named Inventory Tracker Sidebar. My first sheet is inventory, and on that sheet I just got a header record of part number, location, and quantity. This is where I'm going to be keeping my inventory records right here. So my second sheet I have set up is parts. I got part number and description, and my sheet name is parts right here. Now in my drop downs I'll be just using this column. So if you want to do like smart part numbers, you could put like somewhat of a description here. This is just to help you keep track of, if you're just doing regular numbers, this would be the time to put explaining what type of part that is on this column. But that's just referenced in this sheet. Same with locations. I just use this column for locations. If you want like a smart location, say it's on the shelf on row 2, you could put shelf 1, row 2 here in the location. But if you want to just keep it simple with more of a designator, then you could put a description here just to help you identify these designators. And in my log sheet, I have a header record of description, transaction, part number, from location, to location, quantity, and date. And I just populate these down here, the data down here for each transaction I'm doing. So next I'll be going to my Google Apps script. I'm going to give it a name, Inventory Tracker Sidebar. I'm going to hit rename. Next I'm going to put in my Google Apps script code right here. So there I have it copied. I'm going to come up here and hit save. I will provide the code for this project in a link below the video in the description. And next I'm going to be creating my HTML files for the sidebar. So the first one I'm going to be creating is receipt. So I'm going to hit the plus sign up here, my HTML, I'm going to type in receipt. Right there, hit enter. There I have it. I'm just going to create them all right now. So receipt's my first. And I'm going to be copying the same names I have over here to make it easy, like shipment, adjustment, and transfer down here, the 4 I'm going to be doing. So the next one is going to be shipment. I'm going to hit the plus, HTML. Got that one. I'm going to hit the next one is going to be adjustment. Like that. We go back up here, and the last one's going to be transfer. I hit it like that. So I got my 4 HTML files created. Next I'm going to be copying the code for each one of these. So the first one I'm going to do is receipt. I'm going to copy in the code here. So there I have that copied. I'm going to hit save. Next I'm going to go to shipment, copy this code in. There I have that copied. I'm going to hit save. Next I'm going to do adjustment, hit save. And lastly I'm going to do transfer. So I have that copied in. I'm going to hit save here. Next I'm going to go through the code. I'm going to show you how it kind of flows through and how it all works. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Code.gs file up here, and I got these 4 functions that kind of build my menu for the Google Sheet. I'm going to be adding a custom menu right here called Inventory Tracker. But that is started by this function down here called Add Menu. So here, Add Menu, I'm going to call it Inventory Tracker is my new tab. I'm going to list 5 things underneath it. One's going to be receipt, shipment, transfer, adjustment, and delete zero inventory. The four things I'm going to be talking about first is the receipt form, shipment form, transfer form, and adjustment form. So I'm going to start with receipt. So this is calling a function called receipt form. Basically, it's taking these 5 items, adding it to the menu here. So it's my menu options here, down here. And this is what this add to the UI is. And it starts by getting the UI. This is a spreadsheet object, and then you add it. And it's building my menu from the Google Sheet. So the first thing that would be on the selection is receipt form, which calls this up here, receipt form up here. So this is setting my form, my sidebar form, using file receipt, which is my HTML file over here, and I'm setting the title of that to receipt. And then from the get UI, it says show sidebar, and I'm doing my form, my object form here that I defined for my sidebar. So then that'll display my sidebar using this HTML format. So here's my HTML format. I have Bootstrap as my linked library here under my header tag for my HTML, and this is all under the HTML tag to start out with. I got my script, my JavaScript functions here, submit records, and then my return back and get part numbers. And I'll kind of go through these. I'm going to go down to the end of the header record. This closes out my JavaScript, and this is the HTML body, and my fields are PO number, part number, location, quantity. Part number and location are selects. They are drop down boxes here. And then I got a button called submit down here, and that calls the submit record JavaScript function here. This is where I display my settings down here about if the record completed or not. And then the first 2 functions I'll be calling on this form is get part numbers and get locations. So I'm going to populate the drop downs for the form as it's being called here. So get part numbers is up here. So we got to get part numbers, and then I got this function here called Google script run with success handler. This is able to call a Google app script function. So I'm using this, and it's returning back an array using a function callback of an array. And this is standard Google app script functionality that you can use within HTML. And down here is the ending tag of this call here, and this is where you put the Google app script function you want to call. So in this example, I'm using get all parts. So if I go over here and I'll find that function here, get all parts, what I'm doing is I'm defining my spreadsheet SS. I'm grabbing the parts here from the part sheet. So I'm grabbing this here, all these parts, and then from that part sheet I'm getting the date range, or getting the data range and getting the values. So what's it going to do is it's going to grab everything that's populated, and it's going to do a multi-dimensional array, this being the header record and the rest of it being the data. And then the array is kind of 0, 1, 2, 3 for the rows, and then over for the columns is 0, 1 here. So I'm splitting this data up, which is the first row will be headers, which I'm not using this. I'm kind of stripping off the header record. But the rest of it will be under this data array here, and that is what I'm returning back to the receipt. So with that, I'm calling the ID of part number, which is my select statement down here, right there. And then this console log is for debugging through a web browser. You can see the array come through if you're in developer mode on the browser. This is not necessary, needed for this code, it's just for debugging reasons. I am creating an option object. I'm setting the first one as blank, adding it on, and that's just so when the form pulls up, the first option is going to be blank. It kind of forces the user to select then. And then from there, I'm taking the array that's coming back, all my part numbers, doing a for each, looping through. I'm going to be using the item here. And then for the first option, or each one of these I'm setting up an option object, and I'm adding the value in text. Again, from the 0, which is the first part number, not the description. And then adding that to my list. So this is building the part numbers. Same with locations. Getting the locations, pulling them through. And I can go over here where it says get locations. I'm grabbing all the locations from the location sheet. Same process. Again, setting the first one blank and adding just the location to the drop down. Same type of call. So now I have my form populated. And then the next thing I'll be doing is filling it out, submitting the record. And that's submit records up here. And what I'm going to do is my display return, I'm going to make blank, just in case we did a transaction previous to that. I'm going to blank it out just so we're kind of starting fresh. I'm going to grab all the values from all the fields. And then the same thing, I'm going to be calling a Google Apps Script function here. I'm going to be doing a return back. This is my function that's going to return back, and I'm going to return a string within this function here. But I'm calling a Google Apps Script function of submit receipt with my PO number, passing my PO number, part number, location, and quantity. So if I go over here and find submit receipt, let's submit transfer, shipment. Right here, submit receipt. My stuff's coming in, my PO number, part number, location, and quantity. I'm setting the SS for my spreadsheet, the active one, inventory, and then my log sheet as well. So I'm doing an inventory sheet and log sheet. I'm going to be recording a record on my log sheet, so I need both of these. I'm going to check to make sure every one of these three things are populated. Again, the PO number is optional how I set it up. You can either put something in there or not. I'm going to be grabbing all the inventory records here. Again, I'm just interested into the data part of this. And I'm setting a variable of found record as false. I'm going to go through each record of the inventory. So that's the part number, location, quantity. I'm going to see if there's a match. So I'm going to see if there's already a part number and location in there. If there is, I'm going to adjust the quantity. I'm going to add the quantity in. Since this is a receipt, we're bringing material in to what the quantity was already. And then I'm going to set that new quantity for that part number location. Yes, I have it found here. If it is false, here, say I didn't find a record here, I'm going to pin a new record on here with the part number, location, and quantity. So that'll add it to the bottom of the list. So right now I don't have anything in here, but that'll add a record to the bottom or a new record in. And then I'm going to do a log sheet append row. So I'm going to keep track of what I've been doing. So I got my part number. This transaction type is receipt, part number, location, quantity, the part number I'm using, the location I'm bringing in, the quantity, and the date. Returning record saved right here. And then the last part of this is the end of this else. So if one of these three things isn't populated, it's going to return in red back that says entered required data, and it's not going to do any kind of transaction until we get all our fields entered in there. So that goes through the whole submit receipt. So then, and all these kind of have the same type of flow. So I'm going to go back up to the top here, and we're going to cover shipment right here. the shipment form. So we're going to do a shipment transaction. So I'm going to go in my Shipment.html, scroll to the top again, the Bootstrap library right here, and then I'm going to cut through to my HTML where I got my order number, which is this optional field, and then I have a drop down of part number, drop down a location, and a quantity field here, and then the submit button here that will submit the record, my display of the statement coming back. And I should explain this on the receipt. I forgot to explain that, where it does come back here, and then I do populate. I empty out all the fields here, and then I populate that string that comes back and says, you know, if it was a good transaction or not. I display that right here. So that kind of concludes the receipt process of submitting. So I'll go back over to my shipment. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is get part numbers here. Right here, we're going to do this a little differently now because we're going to cut our list down to just the ones that have inventory, because we're going to be shipping something out of a part number location quantity that has quantity. So again, we're doing a get part numbers here. We're calling this same thing Google script run with success handler, and then we're going to call a function called get all inventory parts. So if I go up here and we go down here, get inventory parts, so we're doing our spreadsheet, active spreadsheet, we're grabbing the inventory sheet here. So we'll have all our inventory records here, and we're going to be getting the data. We're going to chop off the header record, just get the data with the values. We're going to set up a part array variable here. We're going to go through each one of these inventory records, and if it doesn't equal 0, or it's not already included in this part array, so we're going to strip it down. We're just going to do distinct parts that do not have 0. We're going to add it to our array here, do a push out, push into our array. We're going to sort our array. We're going to put it in an order, a string order, not a number order, a string order of the part numbers, and then we're going to return it. So then we go back to our shipment. That's going to populate our part number field. So then when we select a part number, we select it over here, it's going to call a function called get locations, and we're going to pass the part number in that we are calling. So whenever we select, it's going to go on change get locations. So we go up here, get locations, we're passing the part number in, we're blanking out the quantity just in case we did a previous transaction. We're going to blank out all the locations here. We're calling our location by ID. We're getting our field name here, object, and we're going to make all the options that were underneath there blank. We're starting over, and we're calling the Google App Script function of get locations, passing that part number in. If I go back over here, go to our get locations, passing the part number in. We're calling our SS object, getting our inventory sheets, breaking this down again, just grabbing the data, not using the headers, creating an array called return array, and then we're going through, and for each part number, and if it's not equal 0, we're going to push that location here as a selection. Then we're going to sort the locations by string, and then we return our locations. So again, picking the part number, and then we're going to get all the locations that part number is associated with an inventory that has inventory. Again, it's not equal 0. We're going to return that back here, and then that populates our location. And then that's going to call get quantity. So then we're going to get the quantity for the part location we have. So that's right here, passing location in. We're going to grab our part number data from the field that we selected earlier. We're going to call a Google App Script function to get quantity. So we go back over here, right here, again, object, inventory sheet. We're going to grab all our data from our inventory sheet. We're going to do a return array. This one we're going to check if it equals part number, location, and then we're going to push that quantity to our array here and then return it right there. So we go back over here. So it's going to come back as array, but there's only going to be one value on it. So we're just going to set that to the 0, and we're going to populate that in as our quantity for the first quantity it found right here. So that populates our quantity after we select our locations. So the next thing we're going to be doing is submitting our record here, which takes us to the top. This is kind of the same flow, grabbing our order number, part number, location, quantity. We're passing that into submit shipment here. Order number, part number, location, quantity. So we're going to go over here, go to submit shipment. We can find it here. There we go. Order number, part number, location, quantity. Again, our object for our active spreadsheet, we are defining the inventory sheet and the log sheets. We're checking to make sure these three things are populated: part number, location, quantity. We're getting our inventory records. We're storing that data as a multi-dimensional array. We're setting a variable called found record to false. Our arrow output is blank right now. We're setting that, initiating that. We're going to go through each inventory record. We find a part number, location record here. We're going to take the quantity and subtract it off the inventory we found here. If that quantity is below 0, we're going to return an error message. We're going to set our error message here, but we're going to return this saying not enough quantity from location, transaction denied. But if we do, we're going to set that new quantity for that location. We're going to say we found a record. Again, if this variable is not equal to nothing, we're going to return the error output here. If this is equal nothing, then we're going to append a record to our log sheet with the information from our transaction. We are going to do a spreadsheet flush. What that does is that just updates our spreadsheet at that point. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're going to refresh our HTML form. So I want to make sure this record is in before I refresh my form for the next transaction. Say you're going to do a couple shipments in a row. So I'm going to do this flush, and that updates our spreadsheet right at this point instead of at the end of all our execution. So then we're going to say record saved. Again, if they don't enter all the data up here, for part number, location, quantity, we're going to put entered required data here as an error message. So then we go back to shipment. We're going to return back our return back here. Again, setting our message, emptying our values for the next transaction. And then at the end of that, we're going to just call get part numbers. And that's going to bring in all our inventory part numbers again to bring them back in. So if we did ship a quantity out of a location, the whole thing, once we run get part numbers again for the next transaction, it's not going to include that part number again. Won't have that in the selection anyway. And that's the reason we do the spreadsheet push there, just to update it. So this can bring in the most recent selection. So next thing we're going to do is the adjustment up top, or yeah, the adjustment. So here we're going to be correcting a location, adjusting the inventory. So again, same setup. Again, I got my Bootstrap library here. We're going to go down to the HTML for our boxes. Here we just have part number, location, and quantity. And then we got our submit button record that's going to do the submit record here. And our display message. And the first thing we're doing is getting part numbers. So we go up here, get part numbers. We're going to get all inventory parts. So we're going to get all the parts with inventory. So again, we went through this. It's just going to grab everything that has inventory. Up here, populate that for parts. If we select the part, we're going to be calling a on change. So we're going to get locations. So locations is right here. Again, we're blanking out the inventory or quantity, and then we're refreshing. We're going to take out all the locations that were in there. It could be blank already if we're just doing the first one, but if we're doing this after one, it'll blank out the previous locations from the previous transaction. Again, populating an option. We're calling get locations for a part, so we're only getting the inventory, or we're only getting the locations for the part we selected from the first drop down. So again, populating that, and then from there we're getting the quantity for that part location. Same functions that we used in the shipment here. So then what we do is we do once we have this all filled out, we do a submit record for the adjustment. So we go find that, submit adjustment here, passing the part number, location, quantity. We're defining our inventory and log sheets, passing this, make sure it's populated, just grabbing our inventory records. We're just setting up a variable called found record, and we're setting up a variable called error output. We're gonna go through each location, and if we find the part location, we're just gonna take the quantity, input it here, make sure it's not less than 0. If it is, we're gonna say you can't make the inventory less than 0. We're gonna adjust it. If it isn't, we're gonna adjust the inventory. We're gonna say we found the record. Again, if it was less than 0, we're going to do our error output here. We're going to add a log record here, explaining our transaction. We're going to update it, the spreadsheet, and then we're going to roll out a message of record saved, return that. Again, if we didn't populate the 3 part number, location, quantity, we're going to put entered required data as a return. So that's up here. Again, we grabbed it. We did our submit record. Same thing. Returning back our message. Blanking out for the next transaction. And then we're going to be resetting our part numbers to get a new, fresh list. And then the last thing we're doing is our transaction here. Step up here, transactions. We're going to be called the Transaction.html. Bootstrap library. We got all our JavaScript functions here. And here we'll be calling the part number, location from, location to, so 2 locations. And then our quantity. Submit button, a record to return our display. And what we're going to do is we're going to kick off 2 functions. One to call the part numbers. We're just going to grab every part number for our inventory, like we did for shipments and adjustments. And then with that, we're going to call all locations for our 2, because we don't really care. We're not going to do any balances there. We're just going to grab all locations, because you could put the inventory in any location you want. So again, part numbers, same thing we did with shipments. I'm not going to go through this too much here. Just grabbing the inventory part numbers. Basically, we're clearing it out, adding a blank, and then bringing them in. Locations, so once we select a part number, it's going to call get locations for the from location. So again, we're blanking out our quantity, blanking out our from the previous transaction if we did one, adding all our locations for the part we selected that has inventory. And then once we select that part, it's going to bring in the quantity. So again, I could call our quantity function from the same Google Apps script function we called in these previous ones. It's going to grab the quantity. And then our get all locations does the 2. So it's just going to grab every location from our sheet and populate there. So that fills out our form. And then we do a submit record for inventory. So we go over to code down here. We can find it here. Submit transfer. So we got our part number, location from, location to, quantity. So then we're defining our inventory sheet, log sheet, and then these 4 things. Make sure they're populated. Grabbing our inventory of data. It's kind of a 2-step process here. So we're setting a variable, a found record, in an error output variable here. We're going to go through our inventory records. We find part number and location from here. As we're going through, we're going to come up with a new quantity here. New quantity, make sure that's not less than 0. If it is less than 0, we're going to say not enough quantity from location. But if this checks out, say it's not less than 0, then we're going to adjust that quantity. So we're going to adjust the from location first. So say we're going to move 10 from 100, so we're going to adjust that to 90 here. Say that's true. We found it. Again, if we get the error, we populate the error. We're going to say not enough from location down here. So then what we're going to do is we're going to grab those records again up here. And then we're going to again declare the found record. We're going to go through these again. So if we find the part number location to location, we're going to adjust that quantity. We're going to take the quantity that we were moving. So say we're moving 10, we're going to add 10 to whatever the 2 location we have here. We're going to adjust that quantity of that record there. We're going to say we found it. If we still didn't find the 2 record here, if we went through, didn't find a record for the 2, we're going to add a record to the bottom, like a new inventory record. We're going to explain the transaction from the front into in quantity here. That was a transfer. We're going to update it. And we're going to hit record saved. We're going to send the message back as record saved. Again, they didn't input all their information. We'll return enter required data down here. So we go back over to transfer, up to the top here. Here's where we captured all our data. We moved it into submit transfer here. We're returning back out our string to say if the transaction went through or not. We're clearing out all our fields for the next transaction. And then after that, we're calling get part numbers to recycle the part numbers up again for the next transaction if we're doing multiple transfers. So I think that goes through all the code here. I'm going to go up to Code.gs for now. I'm going to go all the way up to add menu here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this function here, and that's going to take us through our permissions, and it's going to create our menus so we can start running this program. So I'm going to go up here, select add menu here, run it. So here we're going to review our permissions. I select my account, advanced, go to inventory side, inventory tracker sidebar, and we're going to allow it to update, delete our Google Sheets. Allow. So that finished. I can go to my Google Sheets. Now I have that menu here. I can go to Receipt, and I can start adding in material here. There I have my first quantity record here, and my log showing my first input here. So that concludes this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below the video. Until next time.